Hello, everybody. This is Monday, the 3rd of August. This is the Static Site Editor Weekly. Today, we'll be doing the engineering and product focused versions. We won't be having a separate product and design one this week, as Michael is on PTO. I'll quickly read out a few FYIs. So, as I mentioned, Michael is OO after moving house, and he'll be out through Wednesday. I'll also be out on Friday. I'll be taking that in lieu of a public holiday that we have on Monday. And since Mondays are busy days for me, I'd rather work that day and take Friday off. Derek is also taking some much needed vacation next week. So heads up that he's out. And as Eric added here, no product design call this week. All right. I wanted to introduce a new section, and I'm actually going to share my screen so that we can capture this in the recording. But like what I want to try and introduce is highlights from last week. So first of all, we launched the Static Site Editor for the product section of the handbook. Thank you very much, Eric, for recording that introduction video and stuff. I thought it was great, and there was a lot of kind of like positive vibes in Slack around that. So that was great. We made the edit links in the handbook more accessible. I think, Enrique, you had an image here for it earlier, but doesn't seem like anymore, but I will quickly show it anyway on the screen. So previously you had to go all the way to the bottom of the page to edit the page and open the web ID. And now we actually have it right at the top here, below the maintained by. So contribute to this page, resources and web ID. And then obviously, if you are in the product section, that's the page. Let me just go to product. You get the option to use the Static Site Editor as well. And hopefully we'll be opening that up to the rest of the handbook soon. And then also we refined our success screen, which shows up after creating an MR. Go to the MR here to see. So we used to have it look like this, and now it is like this, much more action-driven in terms of steps that you need to take. And so that's a good enhancement, especially as we prepare to roll out to the rest of the company. All right, I'm going to kind of like keep doing the highlights from last week. I think it's good for us to recap what we achieved, as we can sometimes get lost in all of the stuff we're doing and forget to celebrate the good things that happen. Right, so onto the general section. So we're entering the second half of the milestone. I had a quick scan over our deliverables for 13.3, and they look to be doing well. They all seem to be in a fairly good state, and so I want to suggest that we push to get our issues wrapped up as soon as possible to provide ourselves a bit of free playtime towards the end of the milestone. That could be used to take on an issue in a passion project that you have. I know Enrique has a big passion for GitLab UI, and Derek and Enrique also mentioned that they'd like to tackle some of the performance enhancement work that we're tackling in dev. So if we wrap up our issues early, it always gives a little bit of a kind of like capacity for that. So that's just an idea. The second point I want to highlight is, so last week, Vasily did a great job at providing a status update comment on all of his open deliverables. And I wanted to encourage you all to follow suit, as it's not only a great way to keep the team informed about our progress, but also stakeholders. And that can prove crucial. There's an example that I've linked to where he posted an update, and then there was actually a response to that that was quite important context, which probably would not have come out if he didn't post that update, or it might have come out too late. And so we have a Slack reminder that goes out every Friday for you to update your open deliverables. So I want to encourage you all to do that. I think it's not just a good for us to transparently update people on the status, but like we saw there, it can actually lead to some vital information coming. All right, moving on to the GitLab product for the static site editor. So Enrique, can you give us a quick update on the integration into the handbook?
Sure. So as Jan said, we released a lot of cool stuff last week. I left a link to the to our Unfiltered website where we post engineering updates with some screenshots as well. I want to highlight that, and say thanks to Michael for designing these great UX improvements. But at the same time, they were very incrementable and easy to implement. So that's something that is really worth highlighting. Besides that, Derek and I work on fixing a lot of formatting issues that Eric found last week. They are very small, and they were just like preventing the formatting on several pages. Things like a bug that we found in the way that order lists were incrementing the list markers, and also the inconsistency. Another bug with formatting bold and italics text within the editor. So we delivered many bug fixes related to that. And now the next step is opening the static site editor to everyone in the handbook, to every handbook page. For that, I think that we just need to fix first complete the image uploads, and second, we have to finish with some formatting issues in ERB syntax within Markdown documents. So that's what we are going to be working on this week.
Thank you very much. And since you've already answered point 3, where I asked kind of like how close are we to resolving the blockers, we can skip that one. Derek, you have point 2 there. Can you give us an update on the ERB cleanup that you've been working on and the concern that you might have still?
Sure. Yeah. So just kind of picking up after what Enrique just mentioned. So at a high level, we're using the editor in a unique situation where we're basically have code, which is ERB syntax, but it's not in code blocks or inline code. It's not identified as such using tick marks, which is what a Markdown editor typically expects for code. So this is basically a unique exception case that we have to handle. And the initial implementation worked, but it didn't preserve indentation. And it also, in some unique cases, strips / escape characters. So to make it foolproof, we basically have to take a few more steps. So that's basically what that comes down to. So props to Enrique for, I was a little bit blinded from I went down this approach prior to having a converter from WYSIWYG back to Markdown. But Enrique since implemented that, and now we have a good path to do this. So thank you again, Enrique, for recommending that, because I was kind of blinded temporarily because of that. So long story short, we can do it. Since I'm going to be out next week and I just don't know, I basically have 3 MRs queued. One is I sent to Enrique this morning. So if I can get those done, then all is well. If I can't, that's where my concern is about, pushing it for, just in terms of iteration, we could just not support .erb files for, some small indefinite amount of time until we get those done. So that's basically what that comes down to. So that's kind of up to Eric and how we want to do that. And again, that kind of matches against how quickly I'm able to get it done and how quickly those MRs get through. So, and just for context, based off my initial file audit of .md, .html, .md, and then also the .html, .md, .erb, those are 18% roughly of our handbook. So that just gives us a little bit of context around, what percentage of files that wouldn't be editable for that small indefinite period of time. So just some data to kind of roughly throw out there to maybe help make the decision. But yeah, and just maybe a kind of an aside, like longer term, if we, when we open this up, not just within the handbook, and there are other static sites that also want to have templating syntax, which is essentially what ERB is, from other languages, we would, is that a use case we want to really handle? Because it would be easier if we don't. Again, if we didn't have to handle ERB, our problem would be solved already. But it's something to think about, again, if we want to support other templating syntaxes longer term. So that's just worth throwing out there. So yeah, that's basically it.
Yeah, I think
imagine
then,
that supporting other templating syntax is pretty much thinking if we are going to support other static site generators, right? If we have to support those sites, we need to support the languages that they use for templating.
Yeah, and again, I don't know what the long term is, and that's why I bring that up. Like, so I just want to make that clear. So.
I think we absolutely want to support other static site generators, and I think we would want to support their templating languages too. So I'm more familiar with Jekyll, but if you're writing liquid templates in there, it's or liquid tags inside your markdown is pretty common, but it's not like it's not backticks. So we're going to need a way to identify that, and I think whether that ends up being some sort of upfront configuration where we say, you're using Jekyll or you're using Hugo, you're using such and such, and we have just custom rules written for each one, or if we can find something more generic, I think I'll leave that up to you. I don't know if there is a good solution for either path, but we definitely would want to support as many static site generators as we can.
Cool, I appreciate that. And just to add a little bit more context there is Enrique's done a really good job about kind of abstracting things for configuration already. Like, we know that that's kind of a plan essentially. So I just wanted to share that obviously we would have to write those custom renderers, and then we also have to do the custom conversion back. So that's just where, additional work needs to occur per templating language, unless that exists somewhere, which is possible too. I know this is just in the context of Toast UI right now, like there's a path forward for this type of thing. We just need to do custom work per templating language type. And then again, Enrique's done some good research on, I think Unified is the tool basically to create abstract syntax trees from any document, which is pretty cool. So that also might help us. Again, there's an ecosystem around that, so that might solve some of our problems. I just haven't personally dug enough. But anyway, I think that's a good picture of kind of what we need to handle if we want to handle these kind of more complex scenarios, basically.
I think in terms of just going back to your progress before you go in PTO, I think let's catch up, you and me, on Thursday morning to assess kind of like where we are, what the likelihood of the MRs are that you've created for landing is, and we can then make a call on the way forward with regards to supporting ERB extension or not in the short term.
Sounds good. I'll add a link to the doc real quick too about the 3 MRs.
All right. Point 4 is just a quick FYI. So milestone 13.4's main theme is going to be all about editing front matter. I chatted to Derek earlier today, and he's going to be leading the efforts on this feature. He's shown some kind of like interest in this in the past when we started talking about this. And since Enrique had the privilege of leading the Handbook Integration, time to really relieve him of some leading duties. So Derek will be taking on that. We've got some architectural decisions to make on this one. I briefly discussed some questions I had with Derek, and there's some things we need to decide on around what do we handle via the back end in terms of parsing the front matter. With what things would we might want to bring into configuration in terms of down the line. Might not be for our first iteration, but where does configuration come into the picture, and is it better to pass those values into the editor rather than have the editor parse the front matter itself? So I'm going to open an R&D issue on this so that we can start exploring those considerations. So yeah, just giving you a heads up on that. All right, moving on to GitLab Handbook. Chad, can you give us an update on the Monarch Refactor?
Yes, I can. So I finished all of the tasks that I had identified for the preliminary separation and decoupling tasks and refactoring. That ended up being 29 MRs over the last 2 weeks. And the highlights of those are now all of the jobs for the different areas of the site, which are the two main ones are the handbook and marketing, as well as the various image and assets builds that they share, are now build and deploy in one job, and they're completely independent of each other. So we can split them up into the separate monorepo sites without having to worry about them coupled via partial build or a monolithic deploy. As a result of that, mainly just by eliminating the single in deploy step and its need to spin up a whole dedicated job just to download the assets, which the other jobs already had, and deploy them, the pipeline should be about 2 to 5 minutes faster, I think, depending on whether things are cached or not. And the other nice thing, the handbook site. So if you CD into site's handbook and just run middleman now, it runs fine in dev mode, including all of the assets and images, which wasn't the case before. And so that was a prerequisite for us getting rid of the top level middleman config altogether and removing it as its development mode support. And several passes at refactoring to GitLab CI. It's a lot cleaner. It's the stages have been renamed appropriately based on the different workflows. All the needs, it's all now based on needs instead of dependencies. Not using the deprecated syntax anymore. And all of the sections are labeled. So that sets us up to begin thinking about moving everything that is still under the top level source directory down into sites marketing, which was the big challenge there is how do we share stuff, and to what extent do we try to dry things up to leave it shared versus duplicate things, and what is the best decision on all of those things, which will be a lot of little decisions and seeing what breaks and how we want to do it. That's it.
I've got a question on that. So you already have and will continue to work closely with Lauren and Brandon on this. But would it make sense for us to have a sync chat around planning how we approach moving the marketing files out?
I don't know. I think I just want to take a shot at it.
Okay.
And one thing I forgot to mention, the dedicated blog build plus all of the symlinks that were related to that are now gone. So there's no more symlinks in the repo.
Cool. All right.
Yeah, I think I just need to take a first pass at it and just sort of get an idea of the problems we're going to run into, and then maybe come up with a list of things that we know we need to talk about, because I don't think there's any clarity yet on what we would even need to talk about.
All right, that makes sense. All right, on to GitLab docs. And welcome to our call again, Susan. Good to have you here. So the main progress we made last week, I was out last week, but I followed what was going on, was Vasily had a chat with Stephen Wilson, who's the EM for the distribution team. They kind of like deal with the omnibus package, and they discussed the requirements and limitations that might be involved with bundling GitLab docs with omnibus, because we want to provide an offline version for air-gapped instances. There was a couple of concerns that came out. So the increase of the package size, the omnibus package is already over 700 megabytes, and so it would inflate that even more. They're testing in pipeline durations. Jobs can take several hours already to complete for that build, so that's a consideration. And alternative options that they discussed was providing a post-install step or documentation on how to include the docs project instead of bundling it in Omnibus as well. So potentially, essentially getting to the same outcome, but maybe having it as a process outside of Omnibus, not in Omnibus. So there's still some exploration to be done there, just in terms of what is the right technical execution for allowing a user to have a local copy of GitLab Docs. The more Vasily and I have talked about, it seems like providing pre-compiled pages for a specific version might be the easiest way, because you can literally just serve it behind Nginx or something. It's just HTML pages then. So that might be a solution, and probably aligns with what Stephen was mentioning around providing an outside of Omnibus installation approach. So once Vasily is back from PTO next week, we'll explore that a little bit further and come to a more concrete recommendation of what it is that we suggest. This is how we execute bundling GitLab Docs in an offline environment and getting it up and running there. I know there was also some progress on, or at least some discussion around the approach for the links with the tier name in them. That will unfortunately need to kind of like carry over till Vasily is back next week. But other than that, Susan, you'll be happy to know we're earmarking putting some time aside for Vasily to focus on specifically those two issues, to carry on focusing on that in 13.4. We'd like to see them have a happy conclusion soon. Perfect. All right, over to Eric Eastwood with a Gitter update.
On Gitter, I've been working on the user data exporters, tackling the harder ones first. I refactored the exporter a bit just so it's, instead of Mongoose cursors, it's native iterables. So we can pass in Mongo stuff, or just plain arrays when we have functions that already fetch all the data for us already. That's it for me. Eric?
Thanks. So I have a few things, and I might rattle on a little longer since we don't have my opportunity to talk all evening. But the first thing I wanted to do is I was talking with John earlier, just about an hour ago, and I think my intention is to continue to move forward with our frontman migration as far as we can. And I guess, Chad, you can stop me if I'm overstepping, but I think the next step should be to create an epic that outlines the very clear benefits that we'll get from moving to frontman and sort of justification there. And that way we can track implementation issues under that epic. And yeah, I guess we'll just figure out as we go along if there's any showstoppers and blockers, but we can use that to continue working on it. I think it'll be a
Are we planning
really
on
great opportunity.
dedicating having me do that, or splitting that across other team members?
It'll likely be you leading it, with Vasily supporting as well.
So if that's the case, we can. Maybe we can discuss it just because of splitting my attention across the marketing monorepo move, which I think is going to need most of my attention. And it's I don't know that it's really that urgent right now. Like the middleman stuff is fine, and it may even sort of make the remaining marketing stuff more complicated in some ways.